Security Halt podcast. Let's go.
You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land. His job was to dispose of enemy personnel. To kill. Period. Win by attrition.
Now we'll start.
No worries. I get it. Are you talking about the SOCOM conference that you got back from?
Yeah. Yep, I was at the Warwick Care conference. It was great. But the one thing about, everybody thinks that you're either an extrovert, introvert, and it's a very fine, definitive line. And the reality is you can be a little bit of both from column A, column B. And when you're at a conference, you're having to put yourself out there, sell what you're providing, engage with everybody you're meeting, because you never know who's going to be a next guest, who's going to be somebody you can partner with. But the reality is, someone like myself, I need a partner. I need to have that operations manager, if you will, because I don't turn it off real well. I stay engaged and I won't go, I will hardly eat. I will hardly drink water. And what you end up doing to your body is you end up stressing it to the point where it has no other course of action except to give you that inflammation response, to give you that shutdown code. And then you wake up like I did that Friday, just destroyed. But just like we were talking about a little bit earlier, it's that. But what a relief and a great gift it is understanding your body's way of telling you, like, hey, you're doing too much. Slow it down. Right. Before you would just be like, oh, I've got a flu. And the reality is like, no. The moment you stop, you get a full 8 hours of sleep and you rehydrate and you put good food, keyword, good food back in your body. You'll notice that you start going back down and you start getting back to that point of like, oh, wait a second. Oh, now I'm feeling great again.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting how that works?
Yeah. Who would have thought?
A little like TLC and, leaning into some wellness does a lot for sure.
Yeah. So Trisha Houghton, today you are our guest on Security Halt podcast, and we're going to talk about stress.
Let's do it.
Which is something that I'm intimately involved with, especially now in my capacity on the backside of it, because nobody knows stress like the soft professional, our military professionals, and even our civilian leaders. And honestly, stress is a part of life. But we have these great salesmen, these carpetbaggers who are coming out of nowhere selling you the secret to stress-free.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, but the reality is you're never going to be free of stress. It's understanding how to deal with it.
Right.
So let's jump into that. Trisha, tell us about you. Tell me about what you've got.
Yeah. Well, honestly, it started off as a joke, but now I'm just fully owning it. I am a stressalist. So what is a stressalist? Well, it's me. And essentially, I specialize in all things stress, the body, the stress response, the nervous system, how that all is interwoven into the lives and the roles that we lead. My first career was under the umbrella of psychology, and I spent most of that time, about 15 years, in a one-to-one, but also group facilitator role, and then traveling to various crises and things like that. Loved what I did. Thought it was, really hard work, but really good work. And then about 6 years ago, I'm just headed to work and I am fighting sleep out of nowhere. Like as if someone drugged me and it's starting to take effect. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? I don't live in a big town, so this was not a long commute, thankfully. However, it took my attention enough while I'm gulping my coffee and going, this is so weird. And so I get to work, right? Give it a little bit of time, like, well, stress, right? Like it's a stressful job. Maybe 100 other reasons, didn't sleep well, blah, blah, blah. I have a lot of health history, so it's not a shock factor. So I was like, well, it is what it is. Kind of like died down, so to speak, until next day, right?
Yeah.
Same thing, except now it's from the get-go. and I'm like blasting the radio, and I'm sure I look like absolutely crazy. Windows down, air blasting, just trying to pry my eyes open almost. Seriously. I almost stopped that day, but I was right around the corner. Sure enough, get to work, feel really strange for a while. And I'm like, something's wrong. Something's really wrong. I don't know if I'm getting the worst like flu ever, right? Like you just said, or whatever question mark else. And then long story short, third day, same thing, but I pulled over. I was like, I am not going to make it. And if God forbid I do something to someone else, classic putting others before me. Like, of course, I don't want to do anything to me either. However, I struggle similarly in a serving community to be like, I'm reason enough, right, to just pull over. So I did. And
you're sounding a lot like a Green Beret right
now. I know, right? But gosh, I swear. And that was that. Honestly, I went to my doctor and, like I said, I have a very large health history, so it literally could have been anything. And they were like, well, your nervous system is stuck on. And I was like, I don't, what do you mean? Right? I think I'm probably legitimately said, that's a thing? Nice response. However, I didn't know this. And so I was kind of taken back, right? Because in my training and in my field, you're told two things, and it is drilled into your brain. It is make sure you keep up with your own counseling. You're going to see a lot, do a lot, right? You need that. Number two, it's not if you burn out, it's when you burn out. So again, keep up with number one because number two is going to happen. And so outside of that, and obviously like classroom education and hands-on tools, but apart from that, that was what we knew. So I was like, but I've done all the things. I kept up with my therapy. I kept up with making sure I had a way to cut off the day, because not every day did you go back to an office. And, you just have your day and then, well, okay, I guess I go home, right? So it's not exactly what I call usual. I don't believe in normal, but I do believe in usual. So long story short, the way that kind of unfolded was I said, but, mentally I've been doing great. And I didn't want to be another professional that stayed in too long, because I was addicted to that, right? For lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Or I'm just doing so much good and being the helper, even though I'm like burning it down because I'm not okay. Right. So I had that growing up. I'm not going to lie. And I could smell it a mile away. And I was just like, nope, you don't even practice what you preach. So we have nothing here. So I was like, but I've been doing all those things. And they said, yeah, but I had 14 surgeries by 34. And so
holy cow.
My doctor said, but yeah, Tricia, your health history, right? It's not just your work. She said, when I knew she was the answer, so it was pretty funny, but she said, when was your first surgery? I said 5. She said, okay. And how did 0 to 5 go? And I was like, constantly in the hospital. She's like, okay, so this crash has been coming from then, because every surgery, just like every time you spin up, right? It is fight, flight, no matter what. Even if you're doing well, that doesn't matter. I think we have this connotation, Denny, that if I'm stuck in fight, flight or something like that, or I'm, just struggling, something's wrong with me. Like, it's me. And that's the number one thing, honestly, that I'm trying to change is there's a lot of things I want to do, and I'll share kind of what I do to help remedy some of that. But the one thing that I want is, this is not an issue that most people know about. I do a lot of one-to-ones. And in the past 2 years, I've had 4 people tell me that they knew what nervous system dysregulation is. They didn't know it by that name, but they knew your when I said fight, flight, got stuck in the opposite. And I'm like, oh yeah. I was like, okay, so have you heard of this? And I'm like, yep. I said, okay, can you tell me though what to do for it? Nope. Can you tell me what it looks like? Nope. Okay. So 4 out of literally hundreds, if not 1,000. And so I said, okay, this is not okay. To backpedal, I grew up watching, seeing 9/11, and I've always clicked with veterans. It has never been something I've tried to be like, oh, this is cool. And like, nope, just a natural clicking. And so I knew in some capacity I would be here in some way. I just didn't know this was the way. Long story short, I started my long recovery and had to end that career, and focus primarily on being able to come back. I couldn't control if I was awake or asleep. I would wake up literally, and this was only during the day. And I would wake up and be like, did I move? Everybody has their different impact levels. And then I was wide awake at night. I mean, so annoying. And that's, of course, our cortisol saying, basically with nervous system dysregulation, all the hormones are inverted. So we get most of our cortisol during the day. That's what's healthy. When you have dysregulation, it's opposite. So that's why I was awake all night, because I'm getting all the cortisol and it thinks we're just during the day, and it's not. So I spent a very long time with a large team learning about this, because I didn't know if I was the idiot that missed the memo. So I literally went down a path of who else doesn't know, because I was like, watch all of my colleagues know, and I'm just over here missing the memo. But I didn't. I asked around and they all said the same thing. No, I didn't, but it makes sense. So I thought, okay, well, gosh, how do I ask this on a larger scale, right? How do I ask who else doesn't know in the veteran community? And so I thought about that one for a minute, and lo and behold, call it fate, call it serendipity, I don't know. But I go to PetSmart one day and I've got my psych sweatshirt on, didn't even realize it at the time. But I see this big old guy, and he's about 6'5" and 400 pounds with the Great Dane, and he is doing this. And he goes, psychology. And I said, oh yeah, and throw my hands up. And an hour later, he said, Trisha, you've just described everything that's been going on with me. I'm a soft veteran and I have no idea what to do. Would you see me on the side? And I thought, interesting, right? So I said, you know what? Give me your name, give me your info. I'll look into it because I do want to do it right. I'll get back to you though either way. And he became kind of patient zero, if you will. Coach E0. I hate to say patience. It's too clinical. But I had built basically, and this is was the start of the coaching for me, was I built a nervous system reset program. I'm a research geek. And so I dove in when I knew this was a thing and I had it. And I was like, okay, well, it's going to take everything. And we would, throw mud at a wall, and then it's still not okay. And so I was like, okay, well, clearly we don't know enough about this in a multitude of ways. So I'm going to kind of do a deep dive alongside trusted doctors and take my history of knowledge and then my added knowledge and create this full reset. And it really was the holistic part that took me over the edge to finally get better. The last component for me, I will never forget, was nutrition. And I did not eat bad. I will preface by saying I ate vegetables. I mean, I was a salad fan. I didn't go to fast food much. I mean, really. So I was like, when my doctor said, I got a diet I want you to try, I thought, are you serious? I've been poked and prodded and all the things, and now I can't have food. That was my thought, that total stereotype of great. And of course, though, I'm desperate though, right? I'm missing life and there's no quality there. So I was like, what the hell, right? Like, let's go for it. And sure enough, it was a crazy diet, but it slowly started to help. And I thought, Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, full coming full circle, right? This gentleman was awesome enough to do this, and was happy to be kind of the first one other than myself to go through it. And I have been tweaking it over past 6 years since then. Um, I
Oh,
came up
wow.
with my own techniques. I mean, I do utilize breathing. That's kind of basic for, I think, any program.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's modifications of things that I learned or kind of put two and two together and said, oh, well, let's try this. And that really helped. And I now work with specifically SOF and SEALs community. However, if you are super stressed or you learn about my program and you want to go through it, absolutely. I think anybody can benefit from it. It's just that it was designed specifically to work with exactly what you said when starting this, the hardest of most tried nervous systems, which to me, I agree, Green Beret, SOF, SEAL, that entirety. So my thought was, if I can get it to work for them, everybody else that comes along, which it's open to, it'll work for them as well. So.
Yeah. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge why the SOF community is such a hard and difficult cohort of individuals to work with when it comes to stress. The gas pedal syndrome.
Yeah.
When we have to perform,
right.
What is the thing that gets you into that winning mindset, or what we think is that winning mindset, that narrow tunnel vision, that hard focus on what we got to do? It's that stress. We put ourselves into that mindset, and it's everything, whether it's performing on a stress test to doing administrative duties. I kid you not.
Yep.
One of the greatest phrases that you'll ever hear in a team room: it only takes a minute if you wait till last minute. And the reason why so many people become great procrastinators, not meaning that they can't put out great product. Yeah. They put themselves, exactly. They put themselves in the last minute situations like, hey, you got to do this brief tomorrow. All right, go time. And the entire team room is just nothing but like a symphony of individuals just crushing things. They stay up late and they put together this amazing brief. And you're like, only takes a minute if you wait till last minute.
Oh my goodness.
What did it do to your body? What did that moment? If you freeze and you're able to dissect that moment in time, that one day, how's everybody reacting to that? Well, Chief's not eating. He's going through 15 monsters, dipping through 4 cans of dip.
Yes.
Your team sergeant doesn't go home the entire night, rehearses and rehearses and rehearses and rehearses to execute it flawlessly. And then, because he's already dealing with insomnia, maybe he drinks himself to sleep the next day.
100%.
The whole mindset, the whole thinking, everything's tied together. And nobody wants to stop and say, hey, let's peel this layer back.
Right.
Which system controls my fight or flight reaction, and which symptom dials it back down? Now, how can I enhance the ability of that one system and stop operating in the other? But nobody's talking about it, and you don't know what you don't know. And we feel the adrenaline rush, and we think that's inherently a good thing, and we love it. Let me tell you, if it's one thing that guys love, is an adrenaline rush, and we don't know how it impacts us on the inverse, on the backside. We don't know what it does to our bodies. We don't know the problems it creates down the line. I was there too. I'm guilty of it. You press that gas pedal and you're touching, you're constantly looking to get burnt, and you're looking for that reaction, but you don't know what it's doing. And then the advent and understanding of toxic stress and how it's all linked, especially if you had traumatic events as a child, especially if you've been living with the bear, which is like one of the greatest analogies I ever heard. Like one of the best. Like we think of our fight or flight and freeze response and in relation to how it benefited us way back in the Stone Age days, way back in the day. when you encounter a cave bear and you absolutely need to get prepared to get shredded to bits, your body's going to go into that mode of inflammation. I got to shunt bleeding. I got to prepare you for an attack. I got to get you to pee your pants so you can run out of this thing. All those things are still with us. They're still locked with us as a human being.
They are.
And we don't teach this to our operators. We don't teach this to the community to understand that on the backside of these stressful events, you need to down regulate. You need to pause and breathe, not just keep going.
No, and I think, there's so much culture tied in. I mean, we've got issue upon issue. And so to break that down a little bit, I realize, like, as awesome as a nervous system reset program is, which is called the HACK program, the bigger issue is that people still don't know that this is possible. They might know what they're feeling, but that doesn't mean they know it's a genuine, like, medical issue, right? Mental, emotional, everything. And so I created regulating, which is that training. I kind of took a step back and I said, okay, so we need a training program so that whether you're senior leaders, it was kind of honestly created for that top-down approach. You create this training for the leaders, and then they know what it is, what it looks like, how to identify it so that the people coming up under them, they can help prevent it. Because again, I think we do symptom treatment really well here. We suck at prevention and proactive and all of those other things. I mean, damn, we'll give you guys a peak performance specialist. We'll give you the best recovery tools. We will sleep clinic. I mean, we will do it all. However, those are the symptoms. And to me, the light bulb is, but if it's preventable, which I do think it largely is, if we taught how to regulate, if we taught from the beginning of your military career, because my thought is a two-prong approach, the top down and then the bottom up. So that pretty soon everybody knows, hey, nervous system dysregulation, your fight flight gets stuck and on. That's a whole thing. And if I don't look out for it, and get to the end of my career, whether that be 4 years, 6 years, 35 years, whatever it is, and then I can't stop. But suddenly I'm transitioning, right? And so I kind of have to, and then everything I have not been dealing with and trained to tune out. So again, these cultural layers, you guys are trained from day one to ignore and override. The only context that will help you is in the military. That's it. The rest of life, catching stuff for your family, just relationships in general, your own health, not just mental health, physical health. You have to tune into yourself at some point and say, hold on. Okay, what is the body trying to tell me or scream at me, right? Or something, instead of that beating into submission day in, day out. No, I'm going to tell you what to do and give you all the caffeine and then all the alcohol and then the sleeping pills just so that we can get through another 24-hour period. And that's survival.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's not.
We don't listen or try or do any sort of interpretation of what we're feeling. We just want to either numb it, make it go away, silence it,
Right.
and then just get rid of pain.
Yeah.
Like we don't do a good job of listening, and it's something you have to be taught.
You do.
I didn't know it. I could not
Same.
I found mindfulness as an avenue into that.
Nice.
And that's because I was willing to go into it. I wanted to search it out. But a lot of these individuals, you are not going to be able to tell them, hey, lay down and do a body scan.
Yeah. Right. And what's crazy is we're at the tip of it. So like currently, what is military approved are things that are like your breath work, right? Your meditation, your yoga. I am not knocking those things at all, but there's so many more techniques. And so the things that I integrate during my own training are just a few tips that whether you're behind a desk or in the middle of combat, you can do throughout your day. It literally takes 2 seconds. that will force your nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, that is the recovery nervous system. And so that you're actively, my goals, you're actively doing this with your system throughout the day. So it's not, oh, well, in 12 years, I'll get to it. Well, you're in the red by then, and your family's where? I don't know, maybe here, maybe not, maybe again, second, third partner, marriage, wife, whatever. Kids, are they okay? Probably not. You know, and it doesn't have to be that way for me. And, you know, I think the more we're willing to bring in kind of those out of the box things and say, hey, I mean, so-and-so's gotten really good results and they're doing, you know, they're so much better, and, you know, they're not dependent on alcohol anymore, or they're not, like you said, dipping throughout their sleep.
I've seen that.
I had a guy I actually just worked with. He finally, that was one of his last steps with me, was he said, Trisha, I took out the dip in the night. And I was like, I didn't know you dipped at night. Not that I'm trying to judge, but
I'll judge.
Like, damn. Okay. So I didn't know that, but good for you, you know. So
yeah.
I mean, but no judgment, because your body ultimately, mind, body has one job, and that's to keep you alive. So it will do what it has to do. And if that's grab caffeine or a Monster or Red Bull or 8 cans of dip, right? Super exaggerating, but hey, not by much.
Yeah,
it will do.
I've seen it.
Right? Because that's what works.
Yeah.
But it's what works, not because, and I think this is where I see a lot of people just get confused in general. It's what works, not because that's the only thing that will work. It's what works because that's the only things that you go to. Other things, like you said, breath work, goodness gracious, some mindfulness, some of, you know, my techniques, like your 2-minute field drill, like those things can be an alternative, but you have to actually give it a shot first to actually open the possibility of, oh man, something else could work. But I think we get locked in our brain, and sure, right, that allows us to continue to use the substances, right? If we think and tell ourselves this is the only way, well, then we can do what we want to do, except it does not work forever. It might get you through your deployment. It might get you through whatever. But what happens, like you said, that backside is coming. You cannot outrun, and I've said this till I'm blue in the face, you can't out tough your nervous system. You can't. Yep. It's not a matter of strength. And again, what happens when you live in dysregulation over time is you know, if you think of your brain, right, we've got all these neurons and it lights up. Certain parts of your brain get less, fire up less than other parts. And so those are key areas, though, that are responsible for serotonin and dopamine and correct levels of things. But because you're stuck in this firing over here, you don't have enough of certain things anymore. So I call it living in the aided family. If this if this kind of resonates with you, living in the aided is irritated, frustrated, agitated, and then like, okay, to me, those are your 4 feelings you live in, other than add in anger. But you don't get to happy, you're okay. You live in the aideds and anger. So those 5 emotions, if that's your world, I would bet money that your entire system is just fried. Doesn't mean you're not functioning. Again, the crash, so to speak, mine looked a lot more medical because I had a lot more medical issues. So yours is not going to necessarily look the same as mine. However, the dark thoughts, the things getting worse, what I call bone tired. I tell you, Denny, when someone, I think I legit, this is a funny story, but I'm pretty sure I gave pushback to a nurse one time. She's like, "So are you feeling some fatigue?" No, I'm not feeling some fatigue. I can't fucking, I cannot function.
Bitch, I'm dying.
Right? And I'm like, look, I literally stopped, and this is not me. I'm like, look, this is not strong enough of a word. So
Yeah.
I coined bone tired right then and there.
Yeah.
And I said, look, it's way more than fatigue. To me, I feel fatigue every day, right? It's not, oh, poor me. It's just that's something I've always dealt with. This is in my bones deep that I have never felt before. And I said, literally, I swear to you, if you came to me and said, Trisha, you can sleep for the year. The next year, you won't miss a thing, but you can sleep for the year. I legit would be already tired going, that is never going to be enough. And even saying that now, I'm like, that sounds ridiculous. But I know that then that is how deeply, deeply bone tired is the only explanation I'm willing to take on anymore, because it's more than exhaustion. It's more than sleep deprived. It's more than all of it. It is so deep. And that's why we have suicide numbers like we have. Because when certain areas of the brain don't give you enough dopamine, don't give you enough of all of those things to let you live healthily and kind of reasonably, right? Then you get slowly more depleted. And this is not an issue that gets better. It gets worse. The more you pile in the caffeine, the alcohol, that's making it worse, because all those things create inflammation, and inflammation drives it. So it's kind of this like constant hamster
It's a
on a
never
wheel.
ending negative feedback loop. It's constantly feeding. Like, I know it. That's the first thing guys key in. I mean, they're dialed in at work, they're focused, and then it's time to go home. They get, they do the bobbing back and forth, like, oh, I'm awake. Driving, they get home, they walk through the front door and they crash on that couch. And then the wife, the kids, everybody's like, leave that alone.
Yes, don't wake them up.
And then he wakes up at 7 p.m., eats dinner, and then it's like, oh, I can't go to sleep because I just friggin' slept through from like, and it just keeps feeding that cycle. Right? That's one of the few things that people key in on.
Right.
And have friends that are constantly like, dude, the moment I walk through the door, I'm just dead. I'm exhausted. And it's like, yeah, dude, you are in a constant state of stress and you're feeding it. You're feeding it. You're leading. You're not realizing that your own rumination, your own hard focus, and constantly staying engaged in everything, it's feeding that endless negative feedback loop. And it's so hard to tell an individual to just stop. Just stop. Take a deep breath and stop. Whatever you're thinking about, it doesn't matter. Let go of it, because you're attached and you're constantly feeding into it. And the next day, it's like, oh, I'm so stressed out. Well, if you're constantly walking into work and you're telling yourself, I'm already stressed out, and then that's part of the problem too.
Right. Well, and that's a great point. I literally, when I tell people, and I'll work with a lot of people at the end of their career, because they're finally starting to slow down. So that transition space, that was a surprise for me. I'm not going to lie, but I fell in love with it because it made a lot of sense that this would be when people were most willing to make a change, to learn something different, to try something else and say, maybe let's give it a shot, because life is shitty either way. And now I'm not going to be at work with all the guys and in the team. And, there's that identity crisis moment too that comes along with it. And we don't talk enough about that. So it just becomes this vicious cycle. And the number one thing I ask people when they're like, well, how do I know if I have it? And I said, you do have it. And they say, well, how do you know? I said, your training alone is why you have it. Not even to mention the trauma with the deployments and the spin ups. Just if the only factor you guys had that you were fighting was training, it's still enough, because you've done the override, you've done the ignore, you have learned to shut off. And again, there's only one environment that's helpful in, and it is necessary for that environment. I won't even lie. However, those 2 minutes of downtime, you can be regulating. You can be going, okay, body, I'm checking in. Like, I'm not going to just beat you continually and like, you better work, I'm going to check in and say, hey, we've got recovery coming, right?
Yep.
Talking to yourself. I swear your body knows if you have a relationship with yourself. And if you can tune in and share that, and obviously there's a lot more to that. However, those 2 minutes can literally bring back that system. And I've been in a lot of meetings lately trying to push prevention, push, the programs that I've built so that I always say in my slide deck, right? The last one is because service members deserve to know. You guys know best. You have to know thy enemy, right? It's a whole phrase. It's a whole lifestyle. This is an enemy you don't know about. And we wonder why our suicide rates and our retention rates are in the toilet. I just can't believe it, quite honestly, because it's like, okay, well, it's not rocket science. I just,
Yeah.
And what's amazing is I had a very high ranking person in the military recently tell me that they had psych people look at some research on the autonomic nervous system, on dysregulation, and that breath work, meditation, there was not enough evidence to say that it had any impact on the autonomic nervous system. Denny, I've never heard that before. That was new. I've heard, I've heard a lot. I have heard a lot. I have never heard 3 different very large scale organizations come back right up, because he put their words in the email, that there was not enough evidence in breath work that it makes any big impact on the nervous system. And for those of you who don't know, breath work is directly tied. You breathing, but with your stomach. I call them pregnancy breaths, because that's how I help people know if they're doing it right. Because the big question is always, am I doing it right? Well, if your stomach protrudes out instead of your chest, you're doing it correctly. And that is an automatic way you engage your parasympathetic nervous system.
And we already teach it in the military, especially heavily within SOF.
And I was like, that was my other confusion. And so I sat on that email for a week because I just couldn't write anything that didn't seem sarcastic back. And I wasn't trying to be. I just was so stumped that I was like, I legit, and I typed it when I finally sent it. I said, I legitimately don't know what to say. I don't want to come off as disrespectful, but this couldn't be more incorrect. Like, it just couldn't be. I've never heard this. So, long story short, they were really receptive to the feedback, and hopefully we can try one of the trainings. My favorite thing to do is create to the need. And so he said, Trisha, I can't give you, he's talking about doing the regulating training. So I can't give you, in my world, I get 2 4-hour days for regulating training. And so he said, I can't do that, but I might be able to do 2 hours a training cycle. And there's 3 training cycles back to back. And I said, so that'd be 6, right? He said, yeah. I said, I can do it in that. So I've tailored it I take the basics, right? And I tailor it to the need. Who are these operators? Are they SOF? Are they SEAL? Are they EOD? Are they Rangers? What are they? And then what's the need? I currently actually have a great partnership with a SOF nonprofit that will pay half for any SOF veteran or their spouse to go through any of my programs.
That's awesome.
I've had some talks this past week, actually, with potentially getting part of that other 50% paid for. I'll be honest, I used to want to get the full thing covered. However, I think you need some skin in the game.
Yes.
And so I
Man,
will,
let's
I'm okay.
let's dive into that.
I'm okay with having like another 30, 25, maybe percent so that we're at 75, but you need to have your buy-in and not just by showing up, because I've had people and I've had operators who this organization paid for them fully, and they would, oh, I didn't know we were meeting, and up just time and time again. And I'm thinking, I finally said, look, if this is not a good time or you are not ready, that's okay. I'm not judging that. Just tell me, because it's wasting my time and someone else's dollar that can be used for a guy or a person that is ready. So people might not love me for that, but I'm like, look, I don't want to get I said it the other day. They're like, well, you think you could get another organization to eventually cover your other 50%? And I said, yes, but I don't want that. I want them to cover about 25 more, but honestly, it's doable. It's not something that is outrageous. I'm not asking something you can't do. I will even create payment plans. I'm telling you, my one criteria, Denny, is that you want to. You are ready. I always say, look, I can push as hard as you do, but I can't push harder.
Yeah, it's the reality of the situation when it comes to your mental health journey, when it comes to your healing. You have to be an active and willing participant.
100%.
You have to come to this realization, and it's that coming to Jesus moment. Wherever it happens on your journey, wherever it occurs for you, you have to want it for yourself.
Yes.
You can't do it for your wife. You can't do it for your kids. You have to be willing to do it for you, because that's the only relationship you're going to have for the rest of your fucking life. Mm-hmm. It's life or death, whether you want to believe it or not. Like, we now have the science. We now have the white paper studies. We understand the operator syndrome is at the forefront of every discussion right now on every channel. If you're a soft individual, you understand that this is something that you're going to have to deal with. If you don't start combating this and you keep kicking that can down the road, what's the reality of your life? What can you expect of? You're going to transition. You're going to take the same mentality that you have in the same relationship with stress, and you're going to copy and paste that in your next endeavors. Right. Your wife, your kids, if they matter to you, you're going to want to address this, because the reality is stress doesn't just affect you. It bleeds off into every other relationship in your life. If your wife's already telling you this specific phrase, and I say it all the time, if your wife or your kids say, Dad or Love, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around you, it's time to get help.
Right. I just spilled my coffee down myself, so I apologize. Like, I'm just blotting off if you see it. Oh, man. This is real life. This is life.
That's life.
Right?
But you're
life. Right. And look, reality is not necessarily a fun thing, right? That's why we do all the substances we do, if we're being honest. And I always say, look, I can only help you if you're honest, because no one can do anything with dishonesty. And I agree. Yeah. You don't have to do the honesty all at one time. I help kind of regulate that, but being honest as we move through things. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I am fully a coach now. And that is the best thing. It is my favorite role, because I joke that I can kick your ass a little bit, but it's not a joke, because but we need that, right? Like, if you're in a coaching relationship, there's goals, there's so much that we're working towards. And so there's going to be times we all get in that rut, and it's just like, oh, that trudging through sludge. Plus you're dysregulated. So again, that bone tired is you're actively in it right now. It's not going to feel possible, but I know you have to know that somewhere it is, even if you're just taking my word for it. I always say, look, I don't make promises. And if I say this will happen, it will happen. Again, if you put the work in. Now, I'm not going to promise a certain outcome. Usually it's much better, but it will be different either way. Yep. I've had a lot of really cool success lately, and meaning with other operators. I have a guy that's deployed right now, and yesterday said, Trisha, I am training less and I am more accurate in my shooting. I am more accurate in, he just goes off this list. He said, I didn't expect any of that to improve, and I'm training like 3 times a week, but I don't need to do it more. And I thought that was super cool, because in working with transitioning service members, I didn't have yet the active duty input.
Yeah.
So the fact that I always wrote it down that would also be improved. I didn't promise that, but my whole process, I'm super honest. And so I said, because you're not mentally fighting every second, even if it's just passive, if you're saying, well, Trisha, I don't fight mentally every second. I promise you do. You might not be any bit aware of it unless you're finally driving home or going home because you're too on. Yeah. And that's where you thrive. And so again, like you said, it is cyclical. And it is, I drive myself nuts, Denny. I am a recovering perfectionist. I mean, procrastinator, that too, though, because I would 100% get to that red line. I'm like, no, this is the clutch. This is how. Yeah. And I can't stand that. And so I do my very best now, weeks out, I'm giving small increments. Yeah. And
that's a way better to operate. And I know that even in this endeavor, when I take my time, stick to my schedule, do my production as I should, I don't end up in that state of like, oh fuck, it's Sunday night and I gotta produce and edit and post shit. Right. No, stick to your schedule, break that conditioning. Right. And it's not a perfect linear path. You're going to have little hiccups. You're going to fall back on old habits, because what is the one thing we know? Old habits die hard. It's understanding who you are as a person and being able to have grace, understanding that like, okay, you spent a career or perhaps your entire life developing these habits and you've operated this way. You cannot expect to break this relationship with stress overnight. And you cannot expect that.
And I'll add this in. I think that is one of the number one hindrances I see, is because to me, you have 2 goals every day. You have the goal, your big goal, right? Like the one that you are after. But then you have the everyday meeting myself in the moment goal that to you might seem really small. I don't believe in small goals, because if it moves you forward, it's not small. So at first I make those two goals every day. Got your one, your big, goal. And then you got the daily one, because we have different needs every day. We need to push more some days, and some days we need to push less. We need to show up for ourselves in different ways, for our spouses, for our kids in different ways. And that is different by the day. And I always say, look, if you want to say you're going to, lose 30 pounds by tomorrow, obviously this is a huge exaggeration as well, but that's about how they make the goals initially. It sounds, and I'm like, or we don't, because here's what I need. I need you to go slow and consistent. That is the pace. It is not here to there, because guess what that does? That's a whole lot of nervous system onness. We don't need that anymore in that way. You need it, don't get me wrong, but you don't need it to stay on. You don't need it in that capacity. You don't need the same amount as you did when you're kicking indoors in the middle of Iraq. That's not the pace. And so when I say, well, people say, well, Trisha, how do I know? And again, yes, you're training, but if you can't sit still, that is not usual. If you cannot sit still, whether that's I'm tapping, I'm, banging on something, I'm shaking my leg. If you cannot, I've had guys go, Trisha, I'm going fucking crazy. And I was like, you're not, but I hear you. Like, I've mowed the grass 7 times in a day. Said, okay, what do we need? right? And so it's a tuning in process with me. I teach you, how to tune back in, and not in this like weird way. Okay, people, I know what you're thinking, but just at the basic level of like, okay, what do I need? And it's not anything grand. It might be a glass of water. It might be a healthy meal. It might be a date with my spouse. It might be to chill out and just sit. These are not having to be, oh, I got to go train for that marathon. No, don't. Like, don't. But, I always say it's saying no so you can say yes for the rest of your life. Because if you continue to say no, you're saying no, not just to now. You're saying no to all the things that you've always wanted: family, friends, careers, experiences in life. So say no now to say yes long term.
That's perfect.
And here's the thing. I tell Denny, I say it every time people ask me, we do a one-on-one, always for free, at least the first time, if not the first two. And it's, questions and honest feedback and giving them an idea. And they'll always say, oh, goodness gracious, I totally lost the thought. What is it they always say?
That's okay. TBI.
But
I deal with that on a daily basis, and now I can just laugh through it. It's you were saying you deal with clients and you talk through this on a daily basis.
Yes, and so what I tell them is that we have to do these daily meet yourself in the moment goals. So that we get to the big goal. So it's not a judgment. It's not, oh, I'm a pansy. Like, this is ridiculous. The self-talk sucks. And that's the first thing I tackle. But in the military community, how do you pump yourself up? A lot of times you pump yourself up by shredding your
I talk about this all the time.
Like,
I talk about this all the time. The self-esteem. Yeah. The self-esteem versus self-compassion. Self-esteem will leave you high and dry when you fail, when you're dealing with something personal and ugly and painful. You got to develop self-compassion. It's the only friend that you're going to have for the rest of your life, regardless of where you are. It's you.
Well, that's the thing.
If I can't tell myself something kind and loving and supportive when I'm facing critiques and judgment from the rest of the world, then I'm not a really good friend of myself. And that's what I want. That's the relationship I have now, and I'm grateful for it. And we're human. I have days where I'm a real critic. If I screw up an interview, if I don't do well, hey, you know what? It's okay. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to crush it. And that's the way we need to talk to ourselves. But we have grown up in a system where, we were athletes, where we heard about the importance of being humble and the importance of being able to critique yourself really heavy. And then we go into the military and we learn AAR style, where it's like you judge yourself really hard. You can judge yourself and you can critique and you can observe, but you don't have to judge every little thing about yourself and then shit on yourself thinking that that's going to motivate you. No, fuck that, dude.
But let's go back to the culture training. You had drill sergeants that tore you to fucking shreds. You piece of shit. Get the fuck up. Blah, blah, blah. Right? So what internal voice do you use to pump yourself up? You're going to use, we are all to some extent a product of our environment until we decide, let's change that. That's not healthy, right? Like, we don't need to do that anymore. And so the first thing I say is, look, you're going to get a whole lot more results from this if you work with yourself, being kind to yourself, meeting yourself in that moment in the day, rather than beating yourself up with shoulds and coulds and fuck ups and all those other things. If we can work with ourselves, it is 100% going to go a lot smoother. But we have to kind of revisit that tape in our head and what we've learned, how we've learned to talk to ourselves. We're just real life today, Denny.
Yeah.
We are really in it.
And we're back after a minor service connected issue.
Hey, all good.
Oh man, gotta.
This,
The dogs are a vital part of the work I do here, and they run part of the
100%.
studio. And they decided they were going to take out the internet, but boy, love their help.
You know what's funny? This reminds me, you were saying that you might have messed up in an interview,
No.
right? You didn't crush it. That's kind of very similar to the mentality, because what if, to me, you still crushed
Yeah.
it because you did it. We're human. We can't be perfect. Crushing it doesn't look like perfection.
Yeah.
Crushing it looks like showing up the best you can. You're going to fuck some things up, and that's totally okay. You can own it. You can move forward from that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you failed if you didn't do it perfectly.
Yes, like that's the best understanding is I had the way I viewed life while I was still in was that you give 100% every single day, and that 100% was 100%, 100%. That's not the reality in life. Maybe your 100% for that day was 60%. Your kids are sick, and your wife's not doing well, and she you guys got in an argument, and that's depleted you, and now you're at 60%. And the next day you reconciled, your kids are doing better, you and your wife had a walk before you went to work, so now you're at 100%, and you're good to go. That's life. You show up at what your highest capacity available. Now it's different if you show up and you don't give a damn. That's a whole different story.
Well, and that's what but see, this is dysregulation.
Yeah.
This fits perfectly because it causes depression,
Yeah.
anxiety, so many mental illnesses. And if you're living in the aided family, that frustrated, irritated, agitated, etc., every day is a struggle, to say the least.
Yeah.
With yourself, with your spouse, with your kids, even if it's just you and the dog. Nothing is small, nothing is easy, nothing. And that's how we get to that dark moment that I am really trying to have not happen.
Yeah.
So that when and if you get to the red, you go, wait a minute. I think there was a girl or a woman somewhere that told me that this might not be all my fault, that there might be something else to blame other than me.
Yeah.
Because currently, with the lack of education, training, awareness about this, that's what people awesome across the board are getting to the red and being like, I'm making life harder. I'm miserable to both myself and others. It's me.
Yeah.
It is me. And I can't. And they think this is just how hard life is, and I can't hack it.
Yeah.
And that becomes evident, right, by all your struggles for so long, and everybody else seems what? Fine.
And perfect and dandy.
Right? Like, you're peppy. Like, that is annoying as hell.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not just you. And so one of my biggest things that, again, I'm trying to go back and punt is awareness, is that training. I do webinars. I mean, we'll literally fit it in however we can, because you deserve to know your enemy, and you're not your enemy.
Yeah.
And if you can know, hey, the best news I can give you guys is that this is resettable. There's so many conditions where I just got to be like, well, we got to beef up those coping skills and get you through this, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I get to say, no, like, remember that energy, kinda, maybe? You remember that, like, okayness you felt with your spouse at some point in time, or kids, or just even going to the store? We can get that back.
Yeah.
And we can.
Well,
but you decide, right? Ultimately, it's your decision, but you deserve to know it exists.
Yes.
That's my thing. And the military deserves to tell you it exists.
Yeah. Well, at the very least, get in touch with Tricia, and then she can help you walk through this.
Right.
So how do we book? How do we
Yes.
get involved and get you to help us through our journey?
So you can email me at Stressalist, right? There's that thing again, stressalist@gmail.com. You can go on LinkedIn and type in, Tricia. I should come up. And honestly, there's stressalist.com as well, which is my website. I'm updating it to add in some new things, new trainings. And so I'm looking for kind of a cohort of 4. I'll be honest. So usually the hack program's done 1-to-1. That's the reset program. However, I love groups. I am a big fan, and I will always personally, as a provider, offer 1-to-1 and groups, because as great as anybody is 1-to-1, I can't give you the experience of hearing another person that's gone through the same thing say something that you thought just you were super fucked up because of, and it was only you. And in your 2 seconds, that your whole world has changed.
Yeah.
So I've created a version that is a cohort of 4, very small, so that everybody still gets the time and energy that they deserve. I provide text support in between the weeks, so that if we need to change something, because we do a wellness plan, a holistic wellness plan, first time that you work in between our meeting times or our group times. And then we alter that based on, how you're doing, how your body's responding. It is kind of like a secret sauce. So we do, okay, let's tweak this, tweak that. It's like I said for myself, that my last thing was that nutrition piece. And then literally it was wild how impactful that was.
And how much does it cost to do to participate in that 4-person cohort?
So the 4-person cohort is $1,750. However, you get half covered if unfortunately it is limited right now to soft. But if you are an operator or if you're a spouse, you get half of that covered. And then you and I set up a payment plan that works for you. I've said, I'm do as much as I can to make it doable. And so literally my only requirement is if you want to do it and you're committed, I will work with you on everything else.
Hell yeah.
So
let's do this. Let's get somebody, let's get 4 people. And when this airs, I'm going to start pushing and doing the social media advertisement, but let's get 4 from the audience. Let's try to get 4 soft individuals. I got one I'm going to throw in there. As soon as we're done recording this, I'm going to.
Nice. Excellent.
That's the number one thing he's dealing with right now. And I know he needs this. So I'm going to be sending at least, so hopefully now we just need 3.
Well, sure. Of course it is individually. And, people like to reach out to me and then, you do that.
Yeah. Yep.
But I don't care. That's part of the process. Right. And I understand. I don't take it personally. It's totally okay. If you want to reach out, I'll be happy to chat, share more about it with you, and even options. Yep. And if you don't want to do a full program, we have individual sessions we can do. I'm starting to offer more groups as well that are just kind of support based.
Awesome. Well, Tricia, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing this and talking about something that I'm passionate about. And I'm gonna be promoting you on not only on this episode, but let's put you in on a basis to come back and talk about this some more, because I feel that if we can address and change our relationship with stress within the soft community, we can allow individuals to explore other things and other ideas, other concepts that maybe they need to get help in too. But it's addressing that stress reaction first that helps so many individuals finally say, you know what, maybe I need to look at other factors in my mental health. Tricia, again, thank you for coming on. What's the name of the website one more time?
Stressalist. So stress-a-list.com. I am updating it. So if you see some stuff from 23, give me some grace. It's been a busy time in a good way. But Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn. I mean, you know, I joke that throw up a smoke signal, I'll be looking for it.
Heck yeah.
Thank you, Denny, for having me. I love your show. Huge fan of you. Any way I can support, gain awareness, absolutely. I'm a partner for you.
Heck yeah. Mutually supporting operations. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time. If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe, and head on over to our Patreon where you can be part of our community and get access to all of our episodes as soon as they drop. And remember, we get through this together. Take care.